They are grim numbers that paint a harsh reality of what's being called an epidemic across Canada. The rise in femicides has been well documented by service providers who say it's getting worse. City News Chief Correspondent Cynthia Mulligan joining us now on day 2 of your deep look into intimate partner violence. And this time, Cindy, you're focusing on the data, on the numbers coming from service providers. What are you hearing?
And they tell a very concerning story, Faiza. Since before the pandemic started, say 2018, 2019, the number of femicides in Ontario alone have gone up by 68% to the end of 2023. These are very concerning numbers when you look at the overall snapshot. But then you add to it, these are the numbers of the victims that we see. But service providers are telling me there are so many other women right now who are struggling and in fear for their lives. And they're seeking out help like they've never sought it out before. The numbers are going up. The calls for domestic calls to police for help in York Region alone have gone up some 31% in the last 5 years. The calls to the Barbara Schleifer Commemorative Clinic, those calls have gone up some 75%. And these are services that offer legal services and help for women. And then you have the shelters, and this is also especially concerning. The shelters are full. In fact, one shelter in Toronto, Nellie's, had to turn away 177 women last year. And this is what the shelter has to say about that.
We are constantly turning women away.
That's frightening.
It is. It's absolutely frightening. And when you're turning somebody away, you just hope that they can survive until they can find the space they need and get to safety.
There are 14 shelters in Toronto for women in crisis, and they're full. How many do you think Toronto actually needs to fill the need?
I would say we need to double.
Double?
We would need double.
It's really heartbreaking to hear the words, you hope they can survive,
Yes.
take care, because what happens when they're turned away from a shelter?
I mean, hopefully they find somewhere else to go. We don't know.
And, you know, usually with, you know, when we hear about these tragedies involving intimate partner violence, the first question that's often asked, which is also the most difficult to answer, is why didn't you leave? What are the barriers there for people who can't leave, where it gets to this point where tragedy happens?
I mean, it's such a complicated question, and no two situations are the same. But there are so many issues. I mean, if you have a woman that's been beaten mentally, she's likely been beaten emotionally. Her self-esteem has been destroyed. Maybe she has nowhere to go. Maybe the shelter is full and she can't afford to go to a hotel. She also could have children, and then she's uprooting those children. I've also been told they're afraid to leave a family pet behind for fear the pet would be harmed. So every situation is different, but what Jyoti Singh was telling me, who was just in that interview, is the one common thing that every woman says is, I want to be safe. I don't want to be hurt anymore. I want my children to be safe. I don't want them in this situation anymore. That's what they all have in common. That's the one thing.
You know, off the top of this interview, we talked about the numbers, the increase in intimate partner violence. Do we know why the numbers are on the rise?
So people say it's the advocates say it's socioeconomic at play here, and you know, we've seen these numbers go up through COVID. There was so much stress on people through COVID. It's socioeconomic. It's you know, job uncertainty. It's the high cost of living. It's the pressures of life that I think across the board have grown for many, many people, and people are cracking. They're just cracking.
And you know, over the years, we've heard service providers, you know, bringing attention to this issue. I'm wondering for you why it's so important to be sharing these stories. Yesterday we heard about Sahara, and today we're looking deeper into the numbers here. Why is this such an important issue for you to focus on?
Because every number represents a woman who's loved, a mother, a daughter, a sister, a friend, and they deserve to live safely. And I think it's a real, people are calling it an epidemic. And the Ford government is considering that, and they're saying they're going to look into it and they're examining it. What I would like to see, if you can call it an epidemic, great, but what are you going to do about it? Like, if you are going to label it an epidemic, then let's get the services to help these women. But you also have to stop it at the core. and find ways to stop it. And I know I was speaking to somebody at the Windsor Police Department recently, and they're going to work with service providers to try and stop it before the violence begins. And they're starting a new pilot project that I hope to learn more about. But we have to get to the root of it and stop it before it happens.
The numbers are shocking and even more daunting. I know a lot of service providers say these are the people who are calling out to us asking for help, but there are so many others out there who can't call.
That's
who
right.
Can't reach out or are not ready to reach out for whatever reason.
And we know that it takes a woman several times before she is successful at leaving. And also the most dangerous time for her is when she is leaving. And we saw that with Sarah. And her mother was so eloquent when I spoke to her mother. And Sarah Bull was killed a year ago. Her estranged husband has been charged with first-degree murder. This is in Windsor. Her mother said we have to address the shame. Her daughter was so beaten down emotionally that she had no self-confidence left, and she was ashamed. She was ashamed, and that's why she wouldn't go to police. And we have to remove that stigma so that women feel that they can come forward and not be ashamed.
Really renewed calls once again to address what many are calling an epidemic. Cynthia Mulligan, thank you so much, and make sure you tune into City News tonight at 5 and 6 for this report. Thanks again.
Thanks, Faiza.